I never thought I would see my own name on a list of people to be fired, but there it was in bold black letters right at the top. I remember the moment I saw it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I had always believed that if you did the right thing, if you stood up for what was true, the world would reward you. That was before I learned how quickly a single secret could turn your entire life upside down. It started on a Monday morning, the kind that feels heavy before you even get out of bed. I had been working at the company for almost 5 years, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. I was the kind of employee who stayed late, who volunteered for the hard projects, who believed in the mission. My boss, Mr. Callahan, was the kind of man who made you feel like you mattered. At least, that's what I thought. He had a way of making you feel seen, like your work was important. But there was always something about him that felt just a little off, a little too polished, like he was always performing for an invisible audience. That morning, I was called into his office. The air was thick with the smell of his cologne, and the blinds were drawn tight, shutting out the sunlight. He smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. He told me he had a special project for me, something confidential. He said he trusted me more than anyone else. I felt a surge of pride, but also a flicker of unease. He handed me a stack of files and told me to review them to make sure everything was in order before the quarterly audit. I nodded, eager to prove myself. As I worked through the files, I noticed small inconsistencies. Numbers that didn't add up, signatures that looked forged, invoices for services that had never been rendered. At first, I thought it was just sloppy bookkeeping, but the deeper I dug, the more I realized this was something else. There was a pattern, a deliberate effort to hide money, to move it around in ways that made no sense for a legitimate business. My heart pounded in my chest as I pieced it together. Someone was embezzling funds, and all the evidence pointed to Mr. Callahan. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself there had to be another explanation. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. I stayed late that night, long after everyone else had gone home, staring at the numbers until my eyes blurred. I thought about what I should do. If I reported this, it would mean accusing my boss, the man who had given me my first real chance, who had always spoken so highly of me. But if I stayed silent, I would be complicit. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying every conversation I'd ever had with Mr. Callahan, searching for signs I had missed. The next morning, I made my decision. I gathered all the evidence, made copies, and went to HR. My hands were sweating as I handed over the files. The HR manager, Ms. Green, listened quietly as I explained what I had found. She thanked me for coming forward and promised to investigate. For a moment, I felt relief. I had done the right thing, but that feeling didn't last. The next day, I noticed people whispering when I walked by. My coworkers, who had always greeted me with smiles, now avoided my eyes. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. At lunch, I sat alone, my food untouched. I could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment in their silence. That afternoon, Mr. Callahan called me into his office again. This time, his smile was gone. He closed the door behind me and leaned in close, his voice low and cold. He told me he knew what I had done. He said I had made a terrible mistake, that I didn't understand how things worked. He accused me of trying to sabotage him, of being jealous of his success. I tried to defend myself, to explain that I was just doing my job, but he cut me off. He told me I was finished, that no one would believe me. I left his office shaking, my mind racing. I tried to focus on my work, but it was impossible. Every email felt like a threat, every meeting a test. The next week, I was called into HR again. This time, the tone was different. Miss Green told me there had been complaints about my performance, that I was being investigated for misconduct. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked for specifics, but she just shook her head and said it was confidential. The days blurred together. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. My friends at work stopped talking to me. I heard rumors that I was unstable, that I had a vendetta against Mr. Callahan. Someone started a whisper campaign, spreading lies about me. I found notes in my desk, cruel messages telling me to quit before I was fired. I tried to keep my head down, to focus on my work, but the pressure was unbearable. One morning, I arrived to find my computer locked. Ita told me I was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. I went home and sat in the dark, staring at the walls. I thought about all the years I had given to the company, all the sacrifices I had made. I thought about my family, about how I would explain this to them. I felt completely alone, but I wasn't ready to give up. I knew I was telling the truth, and I refused to let Mr. Callahan destroy me. I started documenting everything, every email, every conversation, every threat. I reached out to a lawyer who told me I had a strong case for retaliation. I filed a formal complaint with the Department of Labor, detailing everything that had happened. The investigation dragged on for weeks. I felt like I was living in limbo, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My savings dwindled, and I started to worry about how I would pay my bills. But I refused to back down. I knew that if I gave up now, Mr. Callahan would win. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an anonymous number. The voice on the other end was shaky but familiar. It was Lisa, one of my old coworkers. She told me she had seen what was happening, that she knew I was telling the truth. She said she had found more evidence, emails that proved Mr. Callahan had orchestrated the whole thing. She was scared, but she wanted to help. With Lisa's help, I gathered even more evidence. We met in secret, exchanging files and notes. She told me about meetings where Mr. Callahan had instructed managers to write me up for minor infractions, to build a case against me. She showed me emails where he bragged about how easy it was to ruin someone's reputation. My anger grew with every new piece of information. I sent everything to my lawyer, who forwarded it to the investigators. The tide began to turn. The Department of Labor launched a formal inquiry, and suddenly people at the company started to talk. Others came forward, sharing their own stories of how Mr. Callahan had bullied and manipulated them. The HR manager, Miss Green, was placed on leave for her role in covering up his actions. The company tried to keep it quiet, but the story leaked to the press. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what was happening. Reporters called me at all hours, asking for my side of the story. I was terrified, but I knew I had to speak up. I gave an interview telling the world what I had seen, what I had endured. The response was overwhelming. People reached out to me from all over the country, sharing their own stories of workplace abuse. Mr. Callahan was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, but the damage had already been done. My reputation was in tatters, and I knew it would take years to rebuild. I struggled with anxiety, with nightmares that left me gasping for air. I wondered if I would ever feel safe again, but then something incredible happened. The company's board of directors reached out to me. They apologized for what I had been through, for the way I'd been treated. They offered me my job back with a promotion and a public apology. They promised to implement new policies to protect whistleblowers, to ensure that what happened to me would never happen again. I thought long and hard about their offer. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave the pain behind. But another part of me knew that if I left, nothing would change. I accepted the offer, determined to make a difference. I returned to work, my head held high. Some people still looked at me with suspicion, but others greeted me with respect. With gratitude, Mr. Callahan was fired, his reputation destroyed. He tried to fight back, to claim he was the victim of a witch hunt, but no one believed him. The evidence was overwhelming. He lost everything: his job, his standing in the community, his friends. I heard he moved away, trying to start over somewhere new. I didn't feel sorry for him. He had made his choices. In the months that followed, I worked to rebuild my life. I went to therapy, learned to trust myself again. I made new friends, found new purpose in my work. I became an advocate for others who had been silenced, who had been afraid to speak up. I spoke at conferences, wrote articles, shared my story with anyone who would listen. Looking back, I still feel the sting of betrayal, the pain of what I went through. But I also feel proud. I stood up for what was right, even when it cost me everything. I learned that the truth is powerful, that it can survive even the darkest lies. And I learned that sometimes karma really does come for those who think they are untouchable. The day I saw my name on that list, I thought my life was over. But it was just the beginning. I am stronger now, wiser. I know that I can survive anything. And I know that no matter how hard someone tries to destroy you, the truth will always find a way to shine through.